Ms. Mitch, call the roll, please.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. We have an amended agenda. Some things have been removed, some have been added. If I could entertain an adoption of the meeting agenda.
Motion to adopt the amended agenda.
Moved and properly second. Ms. French.
Aye. 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 Aye.
Aye. First up this evening, Mr. Fred Pearson, give us an update on the appraisals.
You're done, right?
Just about. We just about done with the field work. Fred Pearson, thank you very much. Give you a little update. We have completed pretty much all the field work. We've done 11,741 parcels. We've finished all the new construction permits. We completed all the CO permits through June. We've started doing data entry and revisions. We've done 4,800 parcels, about 41% of the county is done. We've done our first sales study. We're in the process of doing our second sales study now. We just do 2022 sales. We welcome any input from anybody. We'll be glad to go over what with the values that we're using. So now's a good time for the public to get involved in it, and any questions they have, I'll be glad to answer for.
Are your early estimates still accurate?
Yeah, you're looking at about 50–60% increase overall in homes. Townhomes are a little closer to market value. Waterfront's a little closer to market value, so they won't get quite as much increase. And the town of West Point's a little closer to market value. But everybody's gonna get a pretty substantial increase. Open land's about $4,000 an acre. Woodland's about $3,000. Just to give you a ballpark figure.
Is that average?
Kind of an average.
Yeah.
And home sites are about 40,000 for the first acre.
Any questions, gentlemen?
That would, I expected. Yeah.
But anyway, everything's going along pretty good, but we welcome any input from any citizens, any groups. Anybody who wants to come in and look at anything we're doing, be glad to have them come in.
We appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the King William Little League season summary, which was a spectacular summary coming up. Mr. Mike, I'm gonna butcher your name. Sorry.
Guys, it's a lot of battles. It's Mike Mayorana, King William Little League. Thank you for the invitation, first of all. Come with great news. I mean, it's been a very, very good season overall, not only from a registration standard, but also from a success on the field standard. So season began with, I want to say we had about 375 overall players registered. That was probably about 150, 160 or so of those would be 8-year-olds or younger. So it says a lot for the future of the league. We are growing at a very rapid pace, which I can't say the same for a lot of the our counterparts in a lot of the surrounding counties and other leagues within our district. So our county alone is bringing in a very high amount of players, and it's led to a very successful season. We ended up with, I want to say, over 20 teams, if you include everyone from T-ball up through juniors and seniors, and even including Challenger. We had a Challenger team as well. That led into our season ended in a couple of weeks before Memorial Day. We ended up having 6 all-star teams that we created after our postseason process. We select the outstanding players from each division. Of those 6, 3 of them have advanced to the state level. So we are, like I said, not only from a numbers perspective, but also from a talent perspective, we are really doing well. One of them in particular, not that they stand out any more than the others, but we had a feeling early on in the season that we had a pretty special team, some pretty special players in our minor softball, which would be 8 to 10-year-olds. So we decided to try and win the bid, for lack of a better term, for that that District 15 tournament. We did get that. We used that to try and hurry up and get some lights on one of our fields to try and use that field for primarily for that tournament for those games. It all worked out timing wise. The county worked with us, Parks and Rec worked with us to get our fields ready, to get our irrigation ready, to get the site and the grounds in good shape. And by the time the tournament started, it was it's flawless, but it was pretty good. We didn't really have any major issues. All we received were compliments from all the counties that came. We overall had, I think, including us, it was 7 overall counties that came to the ballpark over the course of a 5-day span. Let's say overall about 100 players. So you're talking about 100 families coming to the ballpark, coming through the county multiple times over the course of those 5 days. We ended up winning that tournament. Several of the members here were at that game. And since then, those 3 teams have proceeded to fundraise within the community and have raised a good amount of money to that almost covers a lot of the expenses. They're traveling to places as far as Coburn, which is a solid 5.5 hours from here, Springfield, and the other one is in Pocosin. So they have to make some trips. They have to stay overnight for about 3 days or so. And the community has helped and has really supported them. So I think overall at the ballpark, we've got a lot of positive things happening. It's a spotlight, I want to say. We're putting a big shine on the county in our eyes. And that's a big part of why we wanted to host a tournament, because we wanted to show off what we have. So yeah, I think overall we've had a good year, and we appreciate all the help that Percy and company have kind of extended with Parks and Rec, and they've done a great job of helping us.
What's the negative? Parking?
Yeah. I'm sure many can
That's
attest.
what I heard.
Yes, parking's tough. So with that expansion and with that growth comes, it's a positive negative in the sense that, yeah, we have a lot of parents and a lot of cars and very little space to place them when we do have everyone at the ballpark. Opening ceremonies was a tough one. That was probably the most notable of all of it. We did have tough times getting in and out during the tournament. When you get on Saturdays, when you have a lot of people there, it's tough to get out if everyone's trying to get out at one time. And also space in order to park there. We could have them parked at one spot of the field, and they've got to walk a pretty good distance. And when you have parents with young ones, it's a task. That would be one of our bigger needs, I would say. That's something we've kind of rung the bell for a little bit throughout the course of the season.
Probably quite a few grandparents who didn't want to walk that far too.
Correct. Yes, and and so I mean, without having to break down the scope of the ballpark, it's a solid way to go from, let's say you have to park up by the batting cage, walk all the way down past maybe 5 or 6 fields just to get to maybe where you're trying to go, and you're going up a couple of hills. The facility is beautiful. It's very scenic, but it's a tough task if you're trying to walk it, I think, for certain folks. But that is probably one of our primary needs. I do know that the Parks and Rec is working on some expansion and or some ideas for maybe growth within that area. We'd love to be a part of that discussion, if nothing else, to try and work with them to see what we can do to get the most out of the space that we have there. We have certain things we'd love to get, like I said, with the younger players growth, I would say, we do struggle at times to get use out of the field that we have. We do the most that we can, but again, so we're all volunteers. None of us make a dime, so we're out there using our time that we're spending away from our families and our jobs and our real life stuff in order to make the league run. So when you have a lot of players and you have less fields and less space, you have to extend that time in order to get everybody in. So it ends up being more of a task than we'd like for it to be, but we do what we have to make it work. We just like to be involved in the process, I think, and Percy has alluded that we may be able to do that.
I'd like to say that Mr. Moore, Mr. Ashcraft, and myself were at that game, and y'all did a fantastic job. And I'm also on the Parks and Rec Commission, and we are having discussions about trying to alleviate that parking problem. It is a long walk. If you get there at the wrong, we were fortunate enough to have reserved parking spots, but yeah, if you get there at the wrong time and have to park a ways away, that's That's a pretty good hike. And then after the game, everybody's trying to get out of there at one time, unless it's a series of games. That was a championship game.
Right. So yeah, so even to that point, so you're talking about two teams. There were a lot of folks that were
Yeah,
out there
it
that
was.
weren't necessarily from those teams, but just watching or being a part of it. But so on, let's say a Saturday or a Sunday of that tournament, there were 6 teams there all at one time, and some trying to go in and out. It's a good problem to have. It's something that we should probably address. And the goal is to keep growing, not to be stalled by something like that. So
And I don't think anybody was disappointed with the way the facility looked either. It was
Okay.
immaculate.
no, yeah, we have a pretty solid buildings and grounds crew that takes a lot of pride in making it look right. And they did everything they could, and they were there late nights when it was raining and early mornings and all day. And again, Parks and Rec helped out as well with sending some folks to make sure we had extra hands if we needed it. And it was a group effort. And I will say we were all very proud, very excited about the way it turned out.
Good job.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Congratulations. That's a big task. I mean, just having that many players sign up in the first place is impressive.
Yeah.
So, and managing all of that, can only imagine.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Well, I'd just like to say on behalf of the board, it's very commendable what you do with our youth. It's something that you'll never forget. I know I did not, my little league days there, early days of that park. It's something you carry with you forever. So thank you for what you do with the youth, and please continue.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Chief Reeves talk about the good news story, donating a old ambulance.
Good evening, guys. How are you? So we have an ambulance that has been deadline for quite some time. We took it out of service due to functionality well before we received our new ambulance. And I was approached by the schools to find out if we had something they could use for their CTE program. And that prompted this discussion tonight, where I'm asking you guys to allow us to donate the 2006 Ford ambulance. It's an E350 6.0. It's got it leaks diesel fuel. The turbo needs to be replaced. The air conditioning, I mean, it's not really repairable to drive. Their intention is to use the
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, their intention is to use the ambulance portion to train their students in their class for their CTE program, which is career and technical educational programs.
So not really drive.
It's not going to be driven. I
Oh,
think
okay.
the intent is to actually remove the box and place it in clean it up, make it all functional with the 12-volt stuff, and put it in a classroom or just outside a classroom so that the students can go out and utilize it. In the past, we've sold a couple since I've been here. I think they've gone from like $2,000 to $3,000 on the Gov deals. So I think the benefit to our students would probably outweigh $2,000 or $3,000 of cash.
You lucky you got that with a 6.0 engine.
Yeah, you're right. So there's a resolution up for you guys to approve donating this to the school board. And that's all there is really to that.
I
Unless
noticed
you guys have some
this is for
questions.
the 25th of July. Is there any reason we can't go ahead and pass it tonight? Is there a time crunch or?
No, sir. No time crunch.
I'm fine if we want to pass it tonight. We just need to get a resolution on
Yeah, we
the
need a-
branch.
Ms. Branch, do you have a number you can suggest? Five, four.
In which case, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution 22-54.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Ms. Branch?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, very good. Thank you. And still up, Mr. Chief Reeves. Burn permits.
Yes, sir. This memorandum is titled about the burn permits and the fire code for actually the locality code, not the state code. So we currently enforce the state fire prevention code based on the Board of Supervisors election to enforce the state code. You have one of two options. You can enforce the state code, or the state fire marshal can enforce the state code. If the fire marshal from the state enforces the code for us, they can charge us for enforcing the code. Currently, we enforce the code and we employ a fire marshal who's a volunteer who pretty much does a job for us at no cost. They're the very minimal cost to us. The only thing that we pay is the training for him to maintain a certifications to be able to enforce the code. And within the fire prevention code for the county, there are a couple things that we're cleaning up. The actual departments in which King William's emergency response for the fire code and fire protection are comprised of needs to be corrected from years past. Some of the organizations don't exist anymore as emergency response, and some of them aren't utilized. The next thing is to clean up the verbiage in the statewide fire prevention code, which is already there. However, the fire permitting process is included in that code per the state requirement. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep you on track with the state code. So the fire prevention code, regardless of who enforces it, states that, apologize, open burning in section 107, permits and fees. Open burning, an operational permit is required for the kindling or maintaining of an open fire or a fire on any public street, alley, road, or other public or private ground. Instructions and stipulations of the permit shall be adhered to, except exceptions will be recreational fires. Section 307, open burning, recreational fires, and portable outdoor fireplaces. Permit is required. A permit shall be obtained from the code official in accordance with section 107.2 prior to kindling of a fire for recognized silviculture or range or wildlife management practices, prevention or control of disease or pests, or a bonfire. Application for such approval shall only be presented by the permits issued to the owner of the land upon which the fire is to be kindled. The reason why I bring that to you is because regardless of us putting a permit in place or not, the state says that we have to have a permit, and either we put it in place or the state puts it in place. Our permit pretty much follows state guidelines. The size 4x4x4, we tried to find out where all this verbiage came from. That's pulled from regulation from, it looks like different counties have different sizes, and they range from 3x3x3 to pretty much 5x5x5. Anything bigger than that is not considered a recreational fire, therefore it requires a permit. Anything smaller than that requires a permit. So 4x4x4 is kind of a middle spot for those recreational fires. And it also allows for folks to burn leaves and kindling around their properties, keeps our county clean. And I don't suggest that we change that per se, but the rest of the permit is based on the requirement to have a permit.
Section 104, enforcement. It says any local government may enforce, so it is an option. Does that mean if you choose to enforce it, then all of the regulations that precede that are enforceable?
Yes.
So basically, we could eliminate, say, agriculture from agricultural burn from this without enforcement. And forestry, that's enforced by the forestry department, isn't it?
That is correct. As my understanding from all the code that I've been reading on this is that the Department of Forestry is the only department that can override and supersede local ordinance on burning. The Department of Forestry, any burns that are conducted with the Department of Forestry that are exempt from burn permitting are done through the Department of Forestry, and there would be documentation and regulation from the state forester in place prior to burning. And that includes any burns that occur during the statewide burn ban. And not just, not just local burning ordinances, but also the
So
statewide burn ban.
I guess I'm asking, we have a lot of agricultural activity in the county. We have a lot of farmers that, they clean the edges of the field yearly, and that's certainly going to be more than a 4x4 pile. Can we eliminate that from the local ordinance?
It's my understanding that the permitting, after doing a lot more research on this, after it was brought to my attention that there were concerns about it, that the local fire official who is either, appointed by the board currently or by whoever is given the authority to appoint them to enforce the state fire code has the authority to implement the permit. Now, charging for the permit is up to the board of supervisors, but whomever enforces the state fire code has the authority to create a permitting process. And that includes the state fire marshal. So if you allow the state fire marshal to enforce it, whatever he says is appropriate for your locality, you just have to accept. So it's almost better. I think it's better for us to enforce the fire code because we have more control over what we decide to do with it. And the permitting process, which is created and enforced by the fire official, should be appropriate for the county, the locality. So I think that what you're asking is, can we enforce the fire code to some people, not to others? I don't think that, in reading the code, I don't think that there's an option for an exemption for a person, but we can adjust the permitting process to fit the environment in which we live.
But under section 104 enforcement, it says may instead of shall, so it is an option.
I don't think he meant for you to get one and not the other with me.
Right.
Now.
Right. So like if you have a burn permit, so the fire official has the authority to determine within that permitting process what you can burn, when you can burn it, and in the duration of the burn. Those are all in the code. So like if you have a farmer who's clearing his fields and he wants to burn a pile that's bigger than whatever the established minimum is, then the fire official can allow him to do that.
But a locality can have their own ordinance.
You
correct?
you can enforce the state fire code as it is, and you can make it stricter, but you cannot lessen it. So if the state fire code, which it says in section 107 and in 307(2), you must have a permit for open burns with the exception of recreational fires. The flexibility comes in what you decide that you want that recreational fire size to be.
Is that written or just
It's in
on an
code, right?
individual?
It's in the code. The fire size currently, now mind you, the burn permitting process is in place now. It's here when I came. I don't know exactly where it came from, who approved it. And the current fire official said that he did not write it. However, it does pretty closely follow state fire code. It says in there that anything smaller than 4x4x4 doesn't need a permit. So we could make that larger if we wished. And you can choose to not have a permitting process, but that is dependent on the fire official. So if you don't have a fire official in the county, then that falls back on the state fire marshal, which is he's going to probably strictly follow the state fire code.
Are there any localities that exempt forestry and agriculture in any way?
Well, forestry is exempt. If you
Yeah.
go through forestry
Okay.
and the forester approves a prescribed burn of any reason, silviculture, clearing of land for agriculture or anything, if you're working with the state forester and you have the paperwork filled out and filed with the forester, you do not have to worried about permits with the locality. However, the forester informed me that recently in some larger localities that he has went through their permitting process just for tracking from the locality. So they say, we had a prescribed bird on these acres at this time, but we cannot charge the forester for, their burns and their permitting that they do. But the forester supersedes our locality.
Is there anything about air pollution permit?
The only thing that I'm aware of in the county is that from DEQ is the things that you're not allowed to burn, like tires, things that are illegal to burn statewide. Those are the only things I'm aware of in the county. Trash, you're not allowed to burn trash if you have regularly scheduled commercial pickup available to your address. So if you can't get a pickup at your address, then you can burn your household garbage, but you can't burn commercial garbage, if you will. And that's all defined in the administrative code.
So that would be statewide? Is King William in a
Those,
DEQ?
those codes apply to the entire state.
Okay.
The fire marshal now didn't charge us anything to enforce.
No, sir. The only thing we pay for him are his training hours.
No,
and
no.
and things like that.
The state fire marshal.
No, because we do it ourselves.
Okay,
If we choose not to, then he can charge us for enforcing it.
but have they ever? I do not ever remember getting a bill from on arsons or anything.
We've had a fire marshal for at least the last 7 or 8 years. I would say before that.
I think I've seen something
think
as
I'm
far back
talking
as
before
2001, but I'm
Well,
not
and it
100%
could be,
sure.
I think we
Yeah.
have formalized the position a bit more. I think
Yeah.
he'd always kind of been.
Yeah, I think
like
that the county
there as a
has,
Fire marshal.
yeah, I think in resolution, the county has enforced this in some form or fashion to the fire chief of some organization at some point throughout history until they picked it up. I think in 2006 was when they named a fire marshal.
Right.
And then that's carried on until today.
I don't know if this question is for you or Percy. It's written that you may appoint anybody that you wish for the fire marshal. Could you do it with a paid one without any approval?
Can I do it for a paid one?
Could you hire a paid fire marshal?
No, sir, I cannot, I can't hire anybody without board approval. That's a
Now,
paid
if you want-
position.
If the board wants to hire a fire marshal,
No, I'm just asking
you
right
can
now.
create
I
a
mean,
position, absolutely.
we've got to look at expenses on everything. Cause I mean,
Right.
he knows we've got a
Yeah.
lot of firefighters coming out that we don't have a check.
So are you recommending the $25 permit fee?
Well, so the permit fee is like any fees set in place to offset the cost of administrative, the fiduciary burden, right? So that was in place before I came here. And it's really up to the board for you guys to decide whether you want to charge a fee or not. And in the code change that addresses that. So what the code states in there is that the board by resolution may have a fee or not have a fee, depending on how the board wants to operate. We can ensure the safety and the make sure that folks aren't doing things that they shouldn't do without a fee or with a fee. The fee is simply to offset the costs from the county and taxpayers. So if you choose by resolution to not have a fee, it's written in the code change that you can do that. Or if at some point in time, the board determines that we're doing so much of this stuff and legwork and things that we need to add a fee, you can by resolution add the fee without having to change the code.
When someone applies, as in right now, the way it is, how long is it before it's approved?
Well, the permitting process says that the current process is that you need to do it 3 days in advance. Currently, we're investigating the request within a day or two. But sometimes, depending on staff, it may, extend out beyond that.
How far down is that delegation, the authority to delegate, go down from your office?
I don't let it leave the chief staff. So either Chief Jones, myself, or the fire marshal.
This mentions a structure fire. Are we standing by while it happens?
If you
wanna
burn a
burn
home,
structure,
if we have the staff, we will. But it's not necessary for us to stand by because once we get the permit, and now burning a structure is totally different than a pile of sticks or trees. So when you decide to burn a structure, you have to have a demolition permit from the building office. So you get inspected through the building office and we give you a clear to go from the fire department's perspective to make sure that the risk is mitigated that way. So you have two different permits that you have to purchase for that. So if there's any stipulation on that, then we put it into the permit issue.
y'all don't really look at weather like, and I'm talking wind when you're doing it.
Well,
The forestry department does.
yeah, so anytime somebody gets a permit, and it states in the permit that when you burn, it's your responsibility. So if we say it's safe to burn, that means it's safe to burn on a good day. Well, low exposure risk, low wind. And if you decide to burn anyway, you're still liable for you strike the match, you're liable for it. So, and that's expressed to the folks. In the permitting process, like you guys understand, is for safety and regulation of law. So whenever somebody decides to burn something and they get a permit, usually it's not that big of a deal for most of our permits because they're being done by contractors. And most of our contractors in county are very responsible. As far as I know, we've never had an incident to where they have hurt anybody else's property or caused any issues. But when you have your homeowners going out and burning big giant piles, we pay a little more, attention to what they're asking to do as far as do we need to come out and stand by and things like that. So if it's a contractor doing it versus a homeowner, we're probably going to lend a little more assistance to that homeowner, where a contractor is probably going to have a track hose sitting there and, they burn, tens or hundreds of these situations in the past. So yeah, if we can, we'll put somebody out there if they're burning a structure, but there's a little more investigation that goes into a structure burn versus ordinary combustible.
Presently, how many permits are issued a year? Roughly.
I don't know, since January of this year, maybe 20, 30. It's not that many throughout the year. So
I think we ought to leave it permit, $25. So it's not that much. And if they're getting 30, that they've got to handle. Y'all go out and look at this site.
every one of them.
Okay.
And a lot of times what we'll do, the permitting with the fee kind of changes the order of things. You should pay for the permit before we go out and look, because you should read the permit and understand what you're expected to have in place before we go out. But if we get the permit and we understand that, our contractors, they know the deal. They turn them in 2 or 3 weeks in advance. They know what's going on. They pay the fee. But if you have a homeowner, they don't understand. They're coming in, they're like, hey, I'd like to burn this pile of stuff this weekend. I got a party. We'll do our due diligence to try to make it as easy for the homeowner as possible. So we'll email back and forth the permitting and get them to the office so that they can pay the permit. And we'll send somebody on out to look at it, just to protect them from running out of time, if you will, if we can.
I'm not in favor of the $25 fee. And I would like to see if we could ask Andrew if we can exempt maybe agriculture. We already know that forestry can be exempt.
But how do
I'd like to table
you
it.
determine what's agriculture versus somebody? How do you define agriculture, I guess would be the question. When you say, can we exempt?
Well, certainly someone that's living on in a subdivision, or someone that's living on 5 acres of land, you would have to be some form of a producer, I would imagine.
Right. Because we have a lot of land that's, zoned agriculture or just homeowners.
Well, that would be, AC, yeah. Basically, like Farm Bureau, they have a producer. you know, I just think it's a lot to ask for someone that's in their day-to-day life. You know, they clean overgrowth in fields, and, you know, they have to go through the permit process. I don't know. I just don't see the need for its $25 fee. That would be anybody that has a pile of stuff on their property. Then if they happen to be involved in agriculture, they've got to make a trip to the courthouse and wait for 3 days. And then,
We have to make a trip out also.
I'm just not in favor of it. I'd like to table it myself.
Is one that's doing it most.
Well, it's an ordinance revision, so we're on an extended timeline with this anyways, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So this is not something we're,
Right, and you can
Be
approve,
actionable
you're
tonight.
right, and you can actually approve the ordinance changes because they're more guided to just strengthen the language of what we already enforce and change the resolution as to what we're enforcing as far as fees
So
later.
you're asking us to approve changing the ordinance tonight?
No,
Can't-
no,
can't
this
do
is just
that.
this is just to put it on the table. Yeah,
get
But
advertised.
we
2 weeks.
already have a permit process with the fee, correct?
yes, that is correct.
$25. The application, this is pretty much what the application is now with the. with the
What you
site.
have is the official application and all the references to the state and DEQ codes.
And the so-called, hate to use cliches, bottom line is situational awareness. Is that there's going to be a significant burn, the fire department's aware, so that resources, if available, are on standby or cognizant that that's going to happen. And if the worst happens, they're as prepared as they can be. But I don't agree with $25 either.
Well, as we go through, this is a bit of a process that we've got to go through for an ordinance revision anyway. So it gives us the opportunity to ask some questions, one of which would be, and we've done this several times over with planning fees in general, examine what are our actual costs.
The time it takes to process, to go visit the site.
Fuel.
And
We're
if
only
you don't
talking-
have, if you don't have the permit, what happens is somebody's gonna call 911 and you're gonna get 2 engines coming from 2 different fire departments, burning $6 a gallon of fuel at about 3 miles a gallon, going to wherever the fire is to find out that somebody's.
So when somebody
Burning a pile.
calls 911 and you have a record of an approved permit, you don't send anybody to check that fire out.
That is correct. The permit goes to the dispatch center. They ask the questions. If they can validate that the fire's where the burn location is, and it's not the person doing the burn calling 911, then they don't dispatch fire. They inform this person that it's a controlled
I
burn.
think I heard you say that last year was only like 20-some burn permits.
Well, from January, well, I don't know exactly. I didn't dig them up to see how many, but from January to June of this year, we probably have 20 or 30, some odd.
Also, it has a mobile number on here that you could contact the person that's doing the burn.
Yes.
So
So the
if
dispatcher
somebody's
can
just
call
calling
that.
in because they don't like them burning, they could call and find out if it's out of control.
Right, and I can't speak for what goes on in the dispatch center, but our dispatchers are pretty, attuned to what's going on with controlled burns when we notify them. And when we send these permits in, they do their due diligence before they, dispatch folks or not dispatch folks.
Would it be acceptable for someone that was getting ready to burn something to call prior to? So
They absolutely can, and we actually appreciate
would
that.
that be better in lieu of a permit?
Well,
If someone calls in and say, okay, this is my location, I'm gonna light this fire,
well,
they'll still know where it is.
right. Well, the reasoning behind the permit is for safety and to validate that they're not burning something they're not supposed to. So if you call in and say, hey, I'm gonna burn a pile of sticks in my backyard, it's, 20 by 20 by 20, and you say, okay, good deal, go ahead. And it's in the middle of a broom straw field, which connects with the neighbor's garage with a $150,000 boat parked in it, and they burn it down, you've just given them permission to do all that. That's the purpose in the permit, is to prevent that from happening. So, and it also says in the code that an operational permit is required for open air burning twice in two different sections.
Well, right, and furthermore, it says here, it's for civic culture, pulls that out.
Yeah.
That, for recognition of requiring burn. Including also range or wildlife management practices, et cetera. But when we're talking about,
Are we looking at the state code?
I'm looking at 307.2.
Yes.
I'm actually in the state code section here,
Okay.
they pulled this out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it says it's got the same verbiage here, and if you read section 307.
Even for the burns for, through and I feel like this is probably, what leans on the Department of Forestry, can prescribe burning. When you pull back to the silviculture stuff, it says that a permit shall be obtained from the fire code official in accordance with section 107.2. If you're burning with the state forester, he would be the official who, supersedes the locality. And otherwise you'd be dealing with the locality's fire official.
Right, so we were doing this for review anyway tonight, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. There's no action that we can take tonight on this. It's just to put it on the table to look at the code change. And none of this stuff is anything that we aren't already doing. It's all currently in process. However, the code change will put stronger language in the code that would allow the board to manipulate whether or not there's a fee and how much the fee is. The enforcement of the state fire code, unfortunately, whether we do it ourselves or we allow the state fire marshal to do it, it's all the same. So by doing it ourselves, especially since we have a volunteer fire marshal who is doing it, it's no cost to us to enforce the fire code, where if we have the state fire marshal come out and enforce the code, I don't know that they would or would not charge us a fee, but they have the option to charge us a fee for whatever they do. And I don't know how big that fee could get. And most definitely in today's time, when we have issues around the area, I've had folks talk to me and, say that they've had issues getting the state fire marshal.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. The only time I've ever seen them is for an arson,
Yeah.
a true arson, mostly residential.
Right. So when we have issues in the county, it falls back on the local authority. And then we do not support police powers through our fire marshal's office. So that means that the sheriff's office and us handle it together. And I think that that's the best way that we can handle it in our locality.
All right.
Okay. I would suggest we study this a little further. And Mr. Garber, if you have anything that you'd like to pose to the chief in the next 2 weeks.
Well, we've spoken in the
Yeah.
past about this very issue.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the fee is the board needs to decide whether or not they want to charge a fee for the permit. I don't think that we have a choice as to whether or not we need to enforce the state fire code the proper way, because if we don't do it, then the state fire official.
Well, right,
Has to do it.
it's right there in the code section 2, right after the may for local governments is the state, shall enforce this code. It just gives, basically because of Dillon rule, that's where they authorize us to play our part if we want.
We have a lot more say in it if we enforce it ourselves, I believe, even though we can't violate code, that whatever leeway is there, we own it when we enforce the code.
Any other comments,
For
questions?
tonight.
Okay, sir.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave that subject, if you don't mind, our staff's recommendation would be to move it for further discussion on August the 8th. And then if the board would want to go to a public hearing, we would still have time to do that on August the 22nd.
That would give, during public comment period, if anybody was concerned about it or had another interpretation of it, I would assume the ability to come forward and speak.
28th?
No, no, in,
Well, in between now and then,
yeah.
certainly.
Plus, at the full meeting in August, regular meeting, they could come forward and speak.
Right. It's a pretty crowded agenda for the 25th, and if there's some uncertainty as to how this is going to go, I think it deserves another work session discussion, it sounds like. And then we could put it on the agenda for the 22nd for public hearing, if that's what you want to do.
Okay, let's move with that plan then.
Not that it matters, but are these all one letter?
Yeah.
No biggie. Just making sure I wouldn't miss an order.
We're now on 4E, 4 Echo. Which we do not have a, there it is, 4F, I'm sorry, you're right, Mr. Hodges.
E on the agenda.
4 Echo.
Yeah, it ain't a biggie either way. Yeah, that's what I figured looking at.
The agenda has no places right on, so we should be insert.
Yes, yeah.
There you go. Cool. Get ready for certain.
How y'all doing today?
Well said.
Good, thank you. I think you probably have a paper on CERT, what it is and what it entails. We've been working pretty steadily on that emergency operations center and kind of getting up to speed in case a disaster happens. In my prior job, we had a lot of hurricanes that hit and tornadoes that hit in Hanover. And we found that we didn't have the staffing with fire or police to go out and to help people at that time. Well, community emergency response team is something that we can do by using volunteers in that community. You can have people, a lot of people, I used to go to churches. I would go to anywhere they had an event and talk about what you could do. We have people that I've talked to already that are willing to give back something to their county. They may be ex-firefighters or police officers or soldiers. And what they do, it's a class that we offer, and it's 8 days, 3.5 hours a day. It's usually on Tuesday and Thursday. And it goes on for 8 days. And it teaches them a lot of the basic stuff. And what they teach now is much more entailed than when I was in the other job. They can guard and they can do, help with bleeding, people trapped, and it's limited. They're not to go in there and get hurt, but it's a lot of other things they can do. They can assess that, the damage to a home. They could call us and say, we have a roof down. We're not sure if the home's occupied, and that would be a priority for the fire and police officers. So it worked really well. And if I may, I'll just go on one little quick tangent. We had a young man who was missing in Hanover years ago. His name was Robert, and he was an autistic child. And it was in the fall, and the weather was turning. It was very unnerving. I still get a little worked up. But long story short, we had 5,000 people show up at King's Dominion to go search for this child. 5,000. As CERT team members were taking out 100 at a time. We had like 15 or 20 at the time. And it gave us someone as a point of contact that we wouldn't be able to have. Firefighters were running calls, EMS calls, fire calls and everything. And then it was myself and a captain in the police department. He ran one side, I ran the other side. And naturally, the last day we found him. It was awesome. It bolstered these CERT members. And it doesn't mean we're going to find that, but it doesn't give them opportunity where they learn how to search, doing a grid search. If someone's missing, they can go through the woods and things like that. And, it could be a lot of things. I wrote down some things. You can assess the damage. You provide a lot of first aid. And
talked about you could go to powwows if you wanted to and help them with things they need, as far as parking and stuff like that. We've had COVID clinics that could help in parking with that, because that's been a thing. Elections, graduation parking. It doesn't have to be an emergency, but they are trained in basic emergency skills. And in my subdivision where I live down here, I've talked to some people. I think we have some interest. And if y'all are interested, I'd be glad to be the point of contact. And I've talked to Mr. Ashcraft. He's willing to entertain it. It's very cost effective. I'm not going to say it's free, but it's very cost effective. And what we could get from it is way more than what it costs to have these people done. I'm in class now to be the manager of CERT. Before I had a guy that worked with me, he was the manager of CERT, but very limited things. They get a vest, they get a backpack, they get a helmet, a little hard hat, they get, a flashlight, stuff that they could use on call. They would be on a call back. And of course, it'd always be someone from our office would be with them the whole time for safety purposes. But if y'all have any questions, John, you're welcome to ask me. And we're very careful who we get. They have a type 1 and type 2 CERT number. 1 is someone that just will do what we do. Type 2 has background checks. They may have to go a little further than what we want to do right now.
Do these CERT groups also go to neighboring counties when they are in need?
I've been kind of trying to get other counties to join us, and that they're not as lucky as we are to have people support them. I put it like that. They do want to join us eventually. King and Queen and a couple other counties right now, but right now it's going to be King William, and they're welcome to join us after we get it. If they want to do the training, I'm going to offer the training, and they can come and get all the training with us too. So yes, we enjoy. We'd like to have a tri-city, tri-county type thing and have everybody there, and that way it would be if someone couldn't make it, we have a hurricane, heaven forbid, and whatever, or say somebody was on the river and we couldn't find them, so that's another opportunity. You would have 15 people versus 5 people coming out of the station. So
the cost incurred would be the training?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any rough estimate per person?
Well, total for about 10 to 12 is $800, and maybe $1,000 now because of gas mileage. But it's somewhat. But there's some people that may help us with that. Trying to find some people that want to do more than just volunteer. So I'm sorry. But yeah, so it's not that bad. And the little kits they get is about $57. Backpack and a lot of things come with it. Very cost effective for that.
So it's an identifier also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And again, we would always be with them.
And training would be a lot better. I mean, just an example in your article here, Mexico City. Untrained volunteers saved 700 lives, even though they lost 100 of their own, but that's quite a few lives that were saved, and they were there when it happened.
Exactly. I'm talking, Mr. Ashcraft, we're a day away from a catastrophic event, and I know y'all had them here. And I would just like to be, ahead of the curve. I don't want to have to, if we ask for Hanover and they hit the same storm and hit us, or, we wouldn't have that advantage, but certainly they would help us. But if we have a certified CERT team, it puts you in a big network. Where if Chesterfield, they have a large CERT team, but if they didn't get damaged, we would already have an association that could come down here with, and they'd have their gear, and they could, they're on the same page with the training, they could assist us.
For recurring training and minimum quals, is that all established, or is it something you have
yes,
to
sir.
develop?
Yes, sir. The training,
If an individual decides that they want to do this and volunteer, then they're required
absolutely.
so many hours per month or so many
Yeah,
shows.
I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, we're gonna, every month, we got to keep these people engaged, because, a lot of times you're waiting for a disaster, but that's not how we're gonna operate. I was talking about like Cornerstone, and y'all seen that on Saturdays and stuff like that. We could have a couple of people help those vehicles are backed up on the street sometime, maybe for something like that. It's just so many things that go on in this county that we could look at and, utilize that team, but definitely keep people engaged.
And there is a screening process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
What action do we need tonight? Just
You don't need a vote, Mr. Chairman, just a consensus that they can move forward with the establishment of the
Good
program.
to go with, on this end, yeah.
Thumbs up.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, I think I mentioned my mom was on the CERT team in James City County.
Oh, really?
So I'm pretty familiar with the process.
That's
so
awesome.
This would be good to get
I'm
going.
good.
That's great.
Press on.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, a subject that we tabled last year, I believe, cigarette tax. Mr. Hodgins.
That's correct. Good evening. So about a year ago, it was presented to you the possibility of a cigarette tax, local cigarette tax. Just to refresh your memory, at that time, legislation had been passed allowing localities for the first time, or counties for the first time, to pass a local cigarette tax up to 2 cents per cigarette. And staff believed it would be most efficient if the county did want to pass a cigarette tax, that it would be administrated by a regional board. And the closest regional board and the one willing to take us would be the Chesapeake Bay Regional Board. And that includes most of the Northern Neck PDC communities, as well as Middlesex and now Accomack and Northampton. So since that time, just to update you, included in your agenda item is the revenues through the end of May that were taken, as well as the effective date the tax started. I spoke to Jerry Davis, the director of the Northern Neck PDC, just about the experience so far, and he believes it's been going well. The localities have been happy with how it's been administrated, that their revenues have met or exceeded their projections, and that if the county did want to join with them, that they have the resources to include us.
In this list, in this particular list.
Yes,
And this is purely cigarettes, not dip or chew.
purely cigarettes.
Well, y'all guys know how I feel about this, but is Colonial Beach and Westmoreland, are they separate of each other in this agreement?
Correct.
So the town of West Point could also have it without the rest of the
Correct.
county. So, and also Richmond County is separate from Warsaw, Middlesex is separate from
Right.
Havana. So where does West Point, what are they looking at with this? Are they going to incorporate it?
I have not heard them even look at this. Most localities that I've even spoken like off the record with are afraid that they're gonna run, business away from the
Exactly.
locality.
Exactly.
If they do it.
You know,
I
I could
don't
give you,
know,
I
I'm a
could,
little mixed about cigarettes because I don't think,
A lot
and
of
I
cigarette
smoked for
retailers in
years,
cities.
but it's not a good thing.
well, I'll run these numbers again, just in case y'all want to hear repetition. In 1998, there was a master settlement between the tobacco industry and the states. They agreed to pay $206 billion over a 25-year period. That equates to 75 cents per tax, per pack. Also, right now, in addition to that, they are paying $1.01 per pack federal tax. In the state of Virginia, a 60-cent tax. I mean, this industry has been taxed to death. And it is such a thing, that could help make this a point. We're looking for reasons to get people to stop in this county. And I told you all this story before. My uncle and aunt that used to live in Florida, every time they would come to Virginia, they would buy cartons and cartons and cartons of cigarettes and take them back to Florida to get away from that tax. Same thing applies with people traveling up in some of these counties, Richmond County, Essex County. Some of these people travel through King William County every day. That could make them maybe want to stop and maybe spend a little bit of money, appreciate it, spend a little bit of money on some other items.
And
It's
you're saying don't tax
done.
to get that.
You know, I'm not in favor of it, never have been, and I'm biased on it because I worked at Altria. And I've seen, when I first started working there, Ed, you were there, it was 3 plants and manufacturing facilities in the city of Richmond, 1 in Louisville, Kentucky. This is just Altria, and 1 in Cabarrus. Now it's only 1 left, the facility off of Bells Road. It was 11,000 hourly employees working there when I started. It's probably about 3,000 hourly employees now. I think they're paying their fair share.
If I may.
Sure.
Knowing your concerns, I asked VACO if they had done any kind of a study on these taxes since they've been implemented on local businesses, if there had been any compilation of data on that, if they could see where it drove out business or pushed it to anywhere else. They haven't compiled the numbers yet. She said it was on her list and will be given in the next few weeks, anything that they can. And I also asked Mr. Davis if he had seen anything like that or if his localities had said anything about it. And he said that no, but a lot of their localities they have a lot of out-of-state people coming to buy cigarettes and to leave. And even with a tax on it, we're still so much lower than northern states and their taxes that it was seen as
We might not be lower than the northern states, and that is true. But if you have a locality with people traveling back and forth every day, and they can buy a carton of cigarettes in this county for $4 less a carton, I'm thinking they're going to stop.
Well, okay, I'm not going to take a long way to agree with you, but I'm going to agree with you for a different reason.
Because of the tax and the people that would be physically
Sorry.
low
So
income.
The highest rate of smoking is among the lowest income group. The smoking rate in the US now is somewhere around the low 20s, but the rate among people earning less than $20,000 a year is over 30%. So for me, this is a regressive way to raise revenue. And it feels that's not, I think, where we should be. If we're targeting revenue increases at all, we certainly shouldn't be getting it from the pockets of the poorest among us. So for that reason, I would say I would not.
Mr. Hudson, what happens if we say table this again for next year? Does this opportunity stay open, or is there going to be some?
it would stay open until
The General Assembly saw fit to take it away.
take it away or Northern Neck somehow ran out of room, but I don't see that happening. I think it's always an option until legislation changes.
Well, I can sit here and tell you that next year, my mind, I'm not going to change.
Unofficially, West Point is not going to do it.
For the same reasons that we spoke of.
And it's a bad idea.
Looking at the
And-
possibility of moving the money to, say, Parks and Recs to enhance things there.
Sure, no, I get it. It's an amount of money that's hard to sit there and say, well, we could raise an additional, $137,000 of what seems like a pretty, modest tax to put out there. It's just that, again, for me, I understand where Stuart's going with it, but I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a big driver of other sources of revenue, because there certainly are. There's a long history of a lot of very successful cigarette retailers in the cities that have had cigarette taxes for, since
Generations.
cigarette taxes came into existence. But I just don't think, if we've got programs and things that we need to fund, I don't think we should be getting the money for that from the most vulnerable citizens financially.
Could we just go ahead and table this for another year?
We really need to table it, just not act on it, because you can still bring it up.
Right.
Okay,
Good deal.
thanks for the effort.
You see a lot of people are still smoking. They're looking at their
They
face.
said the rate's going up, actually. So the young people are starting to smoke again.
If we could, Mr. Hudgens, while you're tabling this,
What's that?
to find out if adjacent counties, New Kent, Caroline, Hanover, King and Queen, have they voted or have they turned it down?
I know that, I don't know about New Kent. I know King Queen was against it. This was the reason that Northern Neck became PDC, became the Chesapeake Bay Regional Cigarette Tax Board, was because most of their localities wanted to join it, have a cigarette tax, but Middle Peninsula, when Louis Lawrence brought it out, there wasn't widespread wanting to join. So Middlesex moved in the northern neck, became cigarette or Chesapeake Bay region.
Water towers. We're
It's been a little while since I gave you an update on this, and we are really close to having a deed agreement to put before you on the site for the water tower. The second attachment will show you the tax map parcel 28-32, and the highlighted area is zoomed in on the actual survey that is shown.
The blue.
Yes, the highlighted blue, yeah. So the corner of that lot, 28-32, is what is shown in the survey. That spot is the highest spot on that parcel. And right now, the owner of that parcel is willing to give to the county the area that the tower is on. So that is about a third of an acre, it's 120 by 110 or so feet, as well as every easement that could be associated with it and access to it. We are continuing to negotiate, or at least discuss. It would be simpler for the county if the landowner would just gift us the slim piece to access the parcel anyway, then we'd never have to deal with easements. But we're still discussing that. We've just been getting through the rest of the parcel up until now. I expect to have this in the next week. So my hope would be that at the next board meeting, we could have the deed agreement with the final plat before you. But if there are any concerns about what you would like to see in that deed agreement or the site itself, let me know now, and I can try and find
You were
it.
talking about access.
Mhm.
It looks like you will access that off of Manfield Road.
That's correct.
Why does it take in 3 additional parcels of the lots? 28, 22, well, both of those.
Oh, sorry, that highlighted area was not to say that's the parcel that he's giving us.
Okay,
That is to highlight what is actually shown on this survey.
I get it.
So that's, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the others. So what's shown on this survey, you'll see a curvy road. It's kind of light on this printout, but you see a curvy road. That's not actually on the property. That's on the adjacent property. That's the farm road that goes into the farm. We spoken to VDOT, usually you don't put a road right next to another road, but they were okay with this since it would be such low traffic, very utilitarian.
So is that the road that you wanted to use for access, the farm road? Or?
No, we will be putting in our own
Okay.
road. The farm itself has a number of owners, and it would be simpler to go on our own.
Okay, any other questions? If this is approved, how soon will we start building water towers?
Building, not for a little while yet. However, design has been ongoing with this. We had an update meeting today with Bowman Engineering, working on the water main alignment going down Route 30, Route 360, and then up Manfield Road, as well as the extension to the Commerce Park. Site has been walked with VDOT. There's a little creek that has to be crossed. There's some pretty steep terrain. It has to have some decisions. So that is what has been driving the conversation around the design of the water main. And then, of course, the tower itself has been under design.
This is water, and I know I'm going a different direction, but is HRSD went forward on anything on their expansion?
They have put out another, so they had a preliminary engineering review for the expansion from what is now 100,000 to 200,000 gallons of treatment per day. And before doing anything with that, they know that they've decided they're going up to 300,000 gallons per day. So they have to do another engineering review. However, we have been discussing how much they're willing to guarantee development connections before their completion, doing whatever it takes to take the risk that growth would outpace what they've got in completion and guarantee connections, guarantee treatment, whatever that takes on their end, if it's pump and haul from the
Well, we have
Large
some
side.
level of responsibility on our approval of what we're approving, whether they can handle.
we wouldn't approve a set of site plans for a subdivision without getting HRSD's approval.
Are we still looking at 2024 for the expansion or they moved that
I
up?
think it was up to early 2025.
2020.
I think you did.
Oh,
the last time we-
Yeah, sorry, further.
Back to the water tower, I noticed this is just the road right away and the tower right away. I know there's huge pipes that have to go to this. Do we not need any right away for the pipes, or are they coming back?
We're working in the VDOT right away,
Okay.
but that is part of the discussion, using the VDOT right of way and doing whatever we can to stay in that and not have to go out into a landowner.
All right, thanks.
Anything else? We're good.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Ashcraft talking about dogs running at large.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and ladies and gentlemen. This topic was discussed at an earlier meeting in which the process that currently exists was outlined, and that is folks in various subdivisions over the years have took up a petition and come before the board and sought enforcement of a leash law and dogs running at large. There's a long list of those subdivisions that are contained in this document. It was proposed by Mr. Garber that we maybe just do an ordinance that would include the entire R1 district. And then those outside of the R1 district would still have a process in which they would be able to petition the board. And this is laid out in the ordinance one time a year. And that would save costs for various things, legal review and advertising and et cetera. And everybody would have the opportunity to be together on this. But R1 from here on out, once this was approved, they would automatically be part of the enforcement process. But other subdivisions or areas that are not in R1 would still have to petition.
Even if they were rezoned later, R1.
No, they would then become part of the
That's
R1.
what I'm
Yes,
saying.
yes, sir. So if the board is of any of an approval for this, it would be placed on the August 22nd board agenda for public hearing.
Well, I approve.
Everybody good? Thumbs up?
I'm good with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ms. Brandt. She had a lot to do with putting the language together.
Virginia 250.
Mr. Chairman, General Assembly has approved the establishment of the Virginia American Revolution 250 Commission, known herefore as VA 250. And they are reaching out to localities in the Commonwealth to establish local committees that would work with this commission to celebrate the revolution and everything that was pertaining to that, especially here in Virginia. Tonight, staff is asking if the board has any interest in this project. If you do, then we would begin to take the first, we would put a resolution together and put it on the July 25th consent agenda if you approve. And then we would move forward with the establishment of a committee, and we would seek your input into members who may be on that committee. County administration would be your
liaison for working with the committee, and we particularly would want to reach out to the members of the Historical Society and the Museum Council to help us promote this and to plan any activities that might be related to the celebration. So tonight we're asking for, if you want to move forward, we will prepare, well, there's a sample resolution in your packet that we would put on the 25th agenda. And then we would move forward with asking you to give us some ideas of some people who may want to serve on it. We would do our own recruiting and we would come to you to ratify those names.
And what kind of size committee are you thinking?
Well, I'm looking, the most recent Social Services Advisory Board was anywhere from 5 to 14 members. I certainly wouldn't go larger than that. If you'd stay within that scope, I think would be fine. Particularly if somebody as large as the Historical Society and the Museum Council got involved, even if they didn't want to be on the committee, we would look to them to be a large resource in implementing this. So you already have two groups that are really established for history in the county that could easily be part of this.
I personally think this is a no-brainer. We have to do this, part of our heritage.
Okay. So it'll be on your agenda. We'll go ahead and put it on the consent agenda, and if the board wants to talk about it more that night, you can always pull it off.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hudgens, back up for Virginia Telecommunications Initiative contract.
What you have before you is a template of the agreement that will be proposed between the county and DHCD regarding the Beatty grant. I was very hopeful we would have the actual agreement to put before you tonight. Looks like we're a day or two away from that. So what I would hope is that you would authorize the county administrator to sign that agreement as soon as we have it. This template doesn't include any of the numbers, but the numbers are according to everything that we have said so far. The county's match remains the same. The only thing that this agreement is about is how payments are made, how much retainage is kept by DHCD on the grant until All Points has done its work. One of the points that was brought up to me was that in most grants and most invoicing, the company would do the work and invoice you, or the moment that they spend money, they're invoicing you for that money that they've spent. The way this grant is written out in these agreements that are being written is that they're not going to be invoicing the county until after that whatever they bought is in place and installed. So in fact, that is what has driven a lot of the negotiating between All Points and DHCD, is how much money that All Points is going to have to front and have at risk before getting reimbursed.
This might give them some incentive to work a little better.
And I'm assuming that responsibility authority would be delegated in your absence if it does occur this week.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, y'all agree?
Absolutely. So we're still pretty much on an 18-month timeline from here. Once we get this document executed, this
Yes.
is when that clock starts ticking.
Yes.
Do we have any idea from them yet where they're starting?
No, we ask them every time.
Okay.
So they know it's important to us, but no, and they're not, because the answer they give us is what's available, what's not, what easements have they all put together. They keep changing which route they would go. They're not willing to guarantee who goes first until they actually have it all in place to go.
They've not really said explicitly, but the Rappahannock fiber has been laid down Route 30. So whether that would influence them, don't know.
Is that towards the northern end,
Epworth,
Carolina?
yes, coming out of Carolina to Epworth. I mean, Hebron right there at that station. And then the substation at Venner, I believe, is connected.
But Dominion's also been
Yeah.
doing all of
So
their
is
homework as
this,
well.
are they gonna have a sign up period, or are they going to reach out to
They've
the
already-
eligible?
That sign up period's been in effect now for over, 18 months or so.
But it will continue, and we've talked a lot about their marketing, and it's actually part of their grant agreement is how they will market. They've put together their marketing plan, and they don't want to get too far ahead of themselves. They're not going to mass market the county when they're just working in this spot and then this spot and then this spot. They're going to know where they're going to have live within, I don't know, a month, 2 months. And that's when they're going to, you know, basically go
I
door to
was under
door.
the assumption that the sign up, you had to be earmarked for it and then you would sign up.
Everybody,
So everybody can sign up.
everybody under this agreement is eligible
To sign
for
up.
this.
Okay.
And the important thing to tell your constituents and anybody you talk with is that for the first year, regardless of the distance between you, your home,
Free.
and the middle mile, they will cover it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mile, 2 miles,
Yeah, I knew that.
that's very important. A lot of people that live so far off the road thinking they would never get it.
Which is me,
You-
1,800 feet.
The
And
only
just,
complication is my line's buried, but I just got notification they're burying my whole neighborhood, so I guess that's when they'll run
we'll cover it.
the middle mile.
And just to bring everybody that's listening up to speed, the northwest sector of King William is still under the Breeze Line RDOF, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. That is still under the FCC. I've made some inquiries as to what the status might be of that. It's just a very slow process, but that area is not forgotten. Okay, all right, thank you. Sheriff Walton.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, gentlemen. I'm kind of here tonight to ask for your permission or your guidance, if you will, in going forward with a grant for school resource officers. I'm sure you've read in the paper and the headlines the last few months, the governor has, one of his priorities was to put more school resource officers out in those schools that aren't presently served. And we have 2 schools that aren't presently served with the SRO, Cool Spring Primary and Quinton Elementary. So with this grant, and it's a quick turnaround, the grant didn't come out until June 22nd. And it has to be in this Friday. Yeah. So the caveat to this, the grant, it's pretty good. It's a 4-year grant. The first year is completely covered by the state. The second, third, and fourth year, of course, is a matching grant on the county side. And from what I've been reading, it's the maximum would be a 20% match on our side. That would be the max. That's what it says right now. But I don't know that. I can't guarantee that. But what I need, in order for this grant to go through, we have to sign off and certify that we would keep the grant going. They call it a sustainment plan. And we would have to acknowledge that we would continue with the grant throughout the 4-year period. And that's why I can't sign that, or actually Mr. Ashcraft would sign it on your behalf, but I think we need your approval to do that. I know I met with the school board a month or 2 ago, discussing some security concerns that they had. And I know they're in support of us expanding our SRO program, as well as I hear it many times over from parents wondering why we don't have that in the other 2 schools that are currently unserved. And honestly, basically, we just don't have the people. We don't have the positions. This would give us the positions. Finding folks today, we've talked about this before, finding law enforcement officers today is very difficult. It may prove to be a challenge to fill the positions, but I suspect there may be some folks out there who are willing to just do this type task rather than be on the road as patrol or in the court services, but work in the schools. And there may be officers from other jurisdictions who are willing to make that move now versus someone new coming off the street. One of the criteria is you have to have 3 years law enforcement experience in order to do that. So we couldn't just hire somebody new and say, okay, you're an SRO. It'd have to be someone with 3 years, at least 3 years experience.
So what do these officers do like school is 9 months out of the year. The
Yeah.
other 3 months, are they?
They're out on the road.
they on the road?
Right now, my two SRs that I have are covering shifts for the summer. As most people take vacations and time off during the summer, they're helping to cover that vacancy that we have. So there are extra folks out on the road during the summer months. And the grant allows for that.
Sheriff, is this a duty that could be contracted?
In my opinion, no. I don't think we could just put anybody in there to do that.
I would think you can by state code,
But not,
want armed parties to be in there.
I'm just thinking that federal bases have contractors that man the gates in critical areas, and that's where it came from.
Right. Well, we're not just manning the door as a security guard at the school. I mean, we're interacting, we're creating relationships, and they're teaching some of the classes, and I'm not talking about the core classes, but like DARE and Virginia law and things like that. But they build that relationship up, and they're there as a resource to help. And I'll tell you, a lot of jurisdictions, and ours being one of them, a lot of information that SROs gather from those schools help us quite a bit out in the field and solving some of the problems that we have.
Sure. Would it be an issue if you put in for two and get one?
Well, yeah, there's always that possibility of coming in for two and get none.
Yeah.
It is very competitive, and they say
I
that.
mean, between the schools, would that be an issue of where they would be put?
Well, here's the thing is, got to be something was to happen at one of our schools, and we have that now. We have an SRO at the middle school. That's as close as we have an SRO to the other two schools. And if something happens, it's his responsibility. Right now, today, if school's in, his job is to get to those other two schools, or one of those other two schools, while the rest of us are trying to get there. I think it'd be much, much better for us in the long run to have one at each school.
So this would be after 4 years, we physically have to maintain these two positions, or that money would have to be refunded to the state.
No, I don't, it doesn't say that, no. After the 4-year period, could you not fund it anymore? You probably could. I don't think it'd be very popular to do that, but I think you could.
I think it would affect you in the future grants, but I don't think they penalized anybody in the past.
Right.
Have done that. I think because we're looking at budget, sometimes you have to cut back.
Yeah, and nobody knows what future funding is going to be like, and I realize that as well as you. So, no, I don't honestly, Mr. Glover, I think that's an issue there.
So year one is total, they cover the salary. And what were the remaining years?
So year one is completely covered by salary benefits. Year 2, 3, and 4 would be reduced. They're saying a maximum of 20%.
That we have to pay.
Right.
Okay.
We're not talking about an entry deputy. We're talking about a 3-year minimum
Correct.
salary.
Correct.
Any idea of the pay scale? 3 year.
I would hazard a guess around 44,000. That's a hazardous guess right now. Could be more, depending on who goes in there. The total grant that I wrote it with, and I put a little bit more in that. So far, I've asked, thinking a little bit further down the line for a $45,000 position with benefits. The total was $120,526 and some cents for that total match. I mean, for that total grant for 2 SROs.
The only thing that covered is uniforms and firearms.
Correct.
That kind of
Correct.
thing.
So those things we would absorb in their operating budget.
I don't think we can't not do this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, while it's free, and like I said, well, somewhat free, nothing's totally.
We couldn't look ourselves Uvalde situation area. We can't.
Probably something like that happen, which is possible.
Certainly something none of us want to ever think about happening, but the
I mean, is there an
possibility.
rising
will.
third grader to think about it every day?
Well, you could very well have the enforcement officer there and, bad things could still happen, but
That's correct. That's correct.
And that has happened, but they have also stopped stuff from
Well,
happening.
I can assure you, and this has been asked me many times also, our goal, our rule is if something happens, we don't wait. The first officer there, it goes to the threat. That's the way it is. And any other responding officer would respond accordingly after that. But we do not wait for anyone else. Not going to.
It's not supposed to be that way.
That's right.
We don't have an issue like what just happened.
Well, I certainly not gonna second guess what happened down there, Mr. Greenwood, but it certainly doesn't bode well for anyone,
I'd agree with it if you'd like you say, 'cause that's the mentality I want to say. So
Yes, sir.
I'd be.
You gonna be able to make Friday deadline?
Oh,
Yes, sir. It's all written there, other than signatures and waiting for approval. And I really didn't see this last little bit until I got to the end of the grant. And I said, oh, well, we gotta get this approved. I got Friday to do this. So,
Do we need a vote or just a nod?
Move for it.
I'll second it.
Ms. Branch, call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Good luck.
thank you, gentlemen.
All right, wrapping this up this evening before we go into close.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes, sir.
sorry. I neglected to ask for a motion for authorizing county
Oh.
administrator.
Do we have a motion to authorize the county administrator to sign the VATI
So moved.
DHCD?
Second.
Motion and approved, Ms. Branch.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Miskowski, if you lead us off.
I was trying to think if I had any specific requests right now, and I don't. We're covering a lot of topics coming up. We have and are covering a lot of topics coming up in the next couple of months. So I'm pretty satisfied with the plan that we have in place now. I don't really have anything additional.
Mr. Greenwood.
Just want us to keep in mind that thing about the library. I don't want us to just drop it and forget about it. I want to maybe push that ahead. I mean, I understand where we have to do it, but I'd like to still look at some other options. So,
Yeah, I'm totally on board with looking at the other options with the library. I know it's in some of the emails, we're looking at maybe doing something about the grass on 360/30 corridor. What type of area are we looking at? Are we looking at just that area or 360? It's not a lot of grass to cut on 30,
It's a median.
just right there,
Well, no, actually,
all the way through the county.
all the way.
So I think Mr. McKnight had told us that it was scheduled.
I think they,
Did they
when I
start?
passed it today, they were in front of Food Line. Did they get
Oh,
to the
okay.
critical
I
area?
did not notice it. Wasn't
No, I
yesterday.
didn't
for sure.
notice it either.
Yeah, okay, so they still have some work to do up
So
there.
they are,
But
we,
they've come up from Hanover County line all the way up
okay.
to the intersection.
So-
So there seems to be someone who was cutting in front of the meeting in front of the Farm Bureau at Stretch,
they've always done.
Yeah,
which is really nice. But it's probably it's our turn next to cut
Mhm.
the meeting.
So we're gonna look at bids.
He's already working
Yeah,
with,
we were already trying to get them. We've gotten a quote from our gentlemen that work around here, but their equipment that would be able to handle that, they're just weed eaters. So we're looking at larger contractors who do this.
In the mid to long run, we need to look at replacing those weeds. And that's all they are, is weeds. There's no grass there. But I just imagine people coming through the county on the fourth holiday weekend and just seeing that.
Landscape.
I've been to fourth world countries that look better than that.
I'm gonna just throw something in, Mr. Garber. I mean, it's more than like you said, the planning commission has brought up things about the beautifying the landscaping requirements for the businesses. And like you said, we're making them do new requirements to upgrade the landscaping. And then we look at our median and like you said, it looks like crap. It's got these huge weeds and even the new handicap ramp, you can't get through it. Stuff's hanging over. It's a mess.
You know, you have to
See
be,
something like that.
Mr. Ashcraft, I know that you mentioned in your little speech the other night about maintenance of landscaping. That can be critical too, because trees have a way of growing and blocking vision. I don't know what we could do in the future to see that, it's going to be maintained. And I'm done.
Okay. Mr. Hodges.
Well, since you brought it up, don't forget the courthouse and all the flowering plants outside of there and the shrubbery. There is really nobody that's actively taking care of that, that I know of. Sheriff like, I don't see it if they're doing it. Let's put it that way. The only other thing, remind everybody, Friday, food trucks. The next one is July 22nd at 5 o'clock at the pavilion. Very good food, music. We invite you all there. It's a pretty good event. But other than that, I don't have anything else. Just folks be careful in the summer, as we've seen. We've had a few deaths and drownings, that type of thing. You just got to be careful. The water's much stronger than we are.
Very good. I'd just like to wrap it up this evening, wishing Mr. Wagner a belated happy birthday. 79 again. Happy birthday. All right, gentlemen, if I could entertain a motion to convene in closed session.
Mr. Chair, for a motion to convene in closed session in accordance with 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia to consider a personnel matter involving the performance of a specific employee, the salary of a specific public officer, appointee, or employee in accordance with section 2.2-3711A7 to consult with legal counsel, consultants, and/or staff on a matter of actual litigation in which the county is involved, and on a matter of probable litigation in which the county may become involved, and in accordance with section 2.2-3711A8 of the Code of Virginia to consult with legal counsel on a specific legal matter regarding salaries requiring provision of legal advice by counsel.
Second.
Motion and properly second, Ms. Branch.
Aye.
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 Aye. Now we're in closed session. Meeting's back in session. If I can get certification.
Oh, we need to, Mr. Chair, I move we reconvene an open meeting.
Second.
Ms. Branch.
Aye.
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 Mr. Chair, I move SR1.
Second.
Ms. Branch.
Aye.
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 Mr. Chair, I move adjournment.
Second.
Stand by.
Oh.
Ms. Moran, would you please state your family fun night is the 22nd of July? And
Why don't you just say?
I don't know what it's about.
I think you just did.
Farmer's market. Okay, I understand that. It's a family fun night. I'm sorry. So if you can make it, please. If not, meeting. Ms. Branch, did you call a roll for adjournment?
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder, you have a work session with the planning commission scheduled for Wednesday, July the 20th.
20, okay,
At 7 o'clock here in
okay.
the boardroom.
Thanks to you.
Well, is that agenda available?
It's just the zoning ordinance, and we need to get you the recommendations from the
Yes,
planning
ma'am. If we could have some homework,
so that you would have a chance to review those prior to the.
please. Okay. Okay, now.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.